Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode where I have a very special guest. His name is Dr. Nima Rahmany. Now, Dr. Nima is somebody that came into my world at a time when everything was seemingly crashing around me. It was February 2019. I still remember the first conversation that I had with him. He was referred over to me by a close friend of mine named Michael Askey. At the time, my wife and I were going through a lot of challenges. Of course, we had a 1-year-old and we had another one on the way. And little did we know that our second son was about to be born about a month after we met Nima. And we actually enrolled in one of his programs called the Overview Experience. It was a weekend experience. And to say it was transformational would be a massive understatement. Nima ended up becoming a very key part of our lives at that time. And to this day is still a very close friend and somebody that we really admire and look up to for the vision and the mission of how he shows up in the world and the way that he's serving people. And what Nima really does is he helps people understand the underlying causes of why we believe what we believe, why we have these trigger moments in our lives and how they just take things over in a negative way. So if you're thinking about this from the perspective of, what am I going to learn from this podcast interview? It's really meant for anybody that might be going through a challenging time right now, or having a challenge in your relationship, or financial challenges, or whatever the case might be, all the things that life throws at us. Nima is somebody that you definitely want to know. And his story that he shares in this interview about his journey to get to the place where he really is driven to serve people, to help them become trigger proof, as he likes to call it. I think you're going to find tremendous value in this episode. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. All right, Dr. Nima Rahmany, thank you so much for joining me on my show. It's a pleasure to speak with you again, my friend. It's been too long.
I know it feels like talking to an old friend. You're an old friend, and it's like catching up and listening to how much you've expanded and grown and stuff. And looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too, man. And you've been a big part of my story, obviously, and part of the inspiration for me even taking the leap and doing the next level of me sharing my story and helping other people share theirs. So I'm excited to introduce you to everybody that might not know you
Yeah.
already. So to give you a little context to, the reason why I created this was really to be able to share vulnerable, honest stories, and with the intent on inspiring other people and to allow them to turn their mess into their message. And, I have to give you some credit. You were the first person that I heard say that. I don't know if you coined the word
Yeah.
or the phrase, but it came into my world from you initially. And we'll talk a little bit about our connection and background and whatnot, but that's really kind of the context of this too. And there's actually another thing I'd love for you to share with everybody too. I was trying to remember exactly the phrase that you used when me and Shar went through your overview
hmm
experience, talking about the pith and the reed that's flows through
Oh,
you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
do
yeah.
you want to maybe
Wow.
share that really quickly?
Yeah, well, this is interesting because, yeah, we're talking about the mess becoming your message. Yeah, that was when you first reached out to me with Shar and having the challenges you were having in your relationship. Um, uh, we knew that you were going to be the type of person who was going to work through his mess, and then your message will become, you know, your mess will become your message. And I loved how you took that on. And this is essentially our path towards healing. Our path towards healing, each of us, every single human being is on a hero's journey who's gone through a mess, unconsciously gone through this mess through the first half of life, so that it can, if you learn how to integrate that mess and clean it up, it then becomes the message on the other half of the scale. And a big part of my journey of healing has been through growing up as a Baha'i youth in the Baha'i faith. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I was Sunday school teacher, this was a really great imagery. It's a Baha'i prayer actually that you're requesting. It says, "Lord, make me a hollow reed from which the pith of self hath been blown, so
Yep.
that I may become a clear channel through which your love may flow to others." In other words, help me get my ego past, not help me so that my ego doesn't get in the way of me being that channel for divine intelligence, universal intelligence, love to pass through. And I think that's the greatest station we can attain to, is a hollow reed where we are have dissolved ego, and we can use our life as a message for others, as a messenger for others.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I'm so glad you shared that with me again. Because, like I say, I was talking about it with Shar this morning. I was like, I feel like this is a piece of why I decided to take this leap and start doing this show and doing these interviews and stuff. And then I was like, what the heck was that again? It was a pith and a something. Like, I had a few words, but I didn't understand the full context of it.
Yeah,
So I
totally.
love that.
Yeah.
And I'll also say too that, last night, so Shar actually recommended to me that I watch the Brene Brown Netflix special,
Courage,
the
call to courage.
Call to Courage. Yeah.
Yeah. Choosing
Which,
courage over comfort. I love it.
right. Yeah. And that, you can't have courage without vulnerability. And, to just kind of wrap things into like how Nima and I first met. Well, first of all, we met, you were in a car in Australia. You had like literally just landed after like a 16-hour flight, and we hopped on a call. A mutual friend had connected us. But, at that time, Sharmila and I had, we were parents already, about a year and a bit into being parents, and we were about to be parents again and had no idea what was about to come with our second son coming so early. But, we were really in a lot of conflict and just not sure how to navigate this world, like our own emotions and feelings and how to relate to each other. And at that time, Shar was, straight up pretty closed off. She was not wanting to really embrace the mess that had been her journey along the way. And, I mentioned Brene Brown to her, I think 4 months ago or something. And you and I know this because you've actually coached me on this. You're like, look, you can't tell her what to do. This woman's a powerhouse. Like she needs to go down that journey herself. And she watched it actually. And when I said, yeah, I'm interviewing Nima tomorrow, she said, oh, you should watch the Call to Courage tonight before you do, because I think there's going to be something in there that will really resonate. And it really is that vulnerability and the power of vulnerability and how we can't have courage without vulnerability.
Hmm.
So
True
it's just
courage. True courage.
true courage, right?
True courage. True courage. It takes true courage to let down that wall, which is an ego protective mechanism to protect that wounded part of ourselves. So we have this wall around us that blocks us from our vulnerability. It's like a shield over our vulnerable chests.
Mm,
And so this shield actually gets in the way of our relationships, because this shield that blocks the pain blocks you from hurting me, blocks me from getting hurt by you, also blocks me from experiencing love. And we cannot be mentally well, we cannot be physically well if we're blocking love. And
mhm,
that's why it's so difficult. And this is the real pandemic going on right now, Trevor, is
100%.
that in business, in like CEOs, businesses, entrepreneurs, we become entrepreneurs because we have this bone to pick. We don't like authority. We want to be our own authority. We don't like to be under control by anything. We want to have control
Yep.
because of the trauma. Usually, most entrepreneurs I speak to are dealing with some sort of an unresolved trauma that says, fuck authority.
Yep.
I'm going to be my own authority, and which is good. And they become successful that way. But then the entrepreneur who's successful now is contending with the fact that their relationships at home are now falling apart. Their
Yep.
kids don't want to be around them. They're like, "What? I worked so hard." And these are the armor that we put up that blocks vulnerability so that we don't get hurt, but then the people closest to us don't feel our love because we don't know how to feel.
Yeah. Well, you just described me 3 years ago when you met me, right? Like it was literally, it was such a crazy time in my life with, just searching for some supports on the relationship side of things. First of all, that was how we first connected. But then, About 6 weeks, literally 6 weeks after we met, our second son, Bodhi, was born, and he came 4 months early. And I had just, taken out a loan of $100,000 and invested it into something that was completely foreign to me, but a direction I just instinctually knew I wanted to go. And like, talk about a shitstorm.
High
So,
anxiety.
oh man, yeah. And, I really relate to what you're saying there, the idea of like, I've this because it was better than a decade, like it was more than a decade that I had really been on the grind and trying to force my way into success, and realizing that the harder I tried and the more I started to frame success as like financial or
Money.
like acknowledgement from other people, the less successful I felt.
Yeah.
And this is that whole concept of, being able to look at things from a duality perspective. And obviously, that's what I think will kind of bring us into you being able to share a bit of your story too. But the whole overview method and your overview experience, and just the
Yeah.
journey that you went down to kind of figure out some of these things. And I'm sure you're still on it right now, right? It's like,
Hmm.
maybe give people a little backstory on Nima. I don't know how far
Yeah.
back you want
Well,
to go,
you
but
know
like,
what? I
yeah,
can sum it up really. You can learn more about me if you want, but the real relevant point of it is that when an emotion would come up, I would go from 0 to 100 in no time flat. Like I had no ability, even though afterwards I'm like, really, I can't let that get to me, and I got to be controlled, and I can't be so anxious. I was run by my anxiety and my reactivity.
mm,
And for good
yeah,
reason. I was raised with parents, God love them, they're amazing human beings as far as human beings go. Loving, my mom's an amazing cook, so loving externally, and just don't know how to handle their fucking triggers. And so they, when they don't know how to handle their emotions, okay, and this is what I learned to be, it's called enmeshment trauma. So I'm kind of defining what that is.
yeah,
And this is important in your story, in all of our stories, in relationships. This is what I realized is that because I had parents who didn't know how to handle their own emotions and their own anxieties, what happens when your children have big emotions and anxieties? If you don't know how to handle your emotions and anxieties, when your
yeah,
child has them, you then become reactive and you fall back and become the child. And
right,
the child becomes the thing to distract you from your own inner world, and you start obsessing over the inner world of the child.
yeah,
So it my experience of life was that I, when I had big emotions, was judged for it, blamed for it, and shamed for it, which I understand now to be parents that didn't know how to deal with their own emotions. But the experience of having my reality denied, I didn't get physically abused. I mean, I got hit there was no sexual trauma, anything like that. But trauma has many different colors. Trauma with a capital T, which I just described, but trauma with a small t was what I described, what I experienced. As a child, not having your emotions validated, not having your reality validated, has you, and constantly having you gaslit for your emotions and denied and not having a say causes this deep sense of anger, first like sense of hatred for the self. Like
mm,
I must not be a good person because every emotion that I'm having is inappropriate.
yeah,
And it must be because I'm being told, you have emotional issues, you have anger issues, eh, eh, getting gaslit and then getting upset and then going, see, you're angry, and it just it it's this feeling, this sense of no-win situation that happens to a child, which happened to me, that had me doubting myself, doubting my reality, and seeking my validation and a sense of um, worthiness by by performing, by achieving.
mm,
See, look what I got. I'm good as long as I have this. I'm good. And so everyone has their own stories of trauma. Mine came from kind of like the silent type,
yep,
right? And my form of it was, unless you perform at this level, unless you're happy all the time, unless you put out this external kind of picture of goodness, and we just kind of sweep all of the darkness underneath and don't talk about it because it's just not appropriate, you're not worthy of love.
Mm.
So I would show up in relationships this way. I became a chiropractor. I became a great dancer. I became really good at gaining attention
Yep.
because
Yep.
I didn't have it for myself because of the way that I was raised wasn't fed a way that a child would feel security within themselves just for being themselves. It
Yeah.
would be only a sense of security if I achieved, which would only come momentarily. I got my degree, made $1 million. I got the car, I got the whatever, and I'd get that hit of success. But then I would always fall back into why does that empty pit of it doesn't go away,
Yeah.
and I didn't know why, and so I turned to personal development and tried to think my way out of it, and I realized that oh my gosh, like all of the work that I'm doing, all of the anxiety that I'm having, all of the like striving and achieving is not really for, it's for helping people. Yeah, of course, I love when people say my headaches are gone or you've changed my life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But what I was not acknowledging at the time was that a big part of it was this little boy who didn't have his reality validated, his preferences, his choices, his values with with parents that just couldn't understand, and so this constant need for approval but resentment towards authority figures, and these parts of me were at war with one another, and it would show up in my relationships as
Right.
not being able to commit, um, needing lots of women to validate me, not just one. I can't just be okay with one. And so at some point, I had to wake up to the fact that um, this was all the wounded part of me was the one driving the bus, was literally driving the bus. This ego was driving, that was trying to protect that wounded part of me, was literally driving the bus. And until it all blew up in my face, kind of like a month or so actually after I met you, it
Yep.
literally blew up in my face.
Yep.
And I had to not work, I had to pause and not work and go into healing that. This is where you and I started to become, friends, and I worked in your office, and I had to
Yeah.
rebuild my business from the ground up. That I created a new kind of reality of, oh, okay, I went upstream, which was my relationships weren't working because I didn't actually truly love myself.
Right.
And so
Yep.
now, and I realized that I had an intimacy disorder as a result of this. And I realized, oh my gosh, most people have an intimacy disorder within themselves. They don't know how to feel their emotions. They don't know how to acknowledge their own pain. They've been running away from it so long, and it fucks up all their relationships. So I discovered if you're in relationship limbo, you don't know whether you should stay or you should go, which is how I lived for many years with Amanda. Um, you can heal all of that by going inside and getting aligned with that younger part of yourself and healing from the enmeshment trauma and breaking the cycles of intergenerational trauma. So now what I'm doing is I help break cycles of intergenerational trauma that didn't start with your parents either. They were just at the effect of it and had to kind of concede to the fact that they probably will never get it
Mm.
and that it's not my job to fix them,
Totally.
because they will still to this day they have an intolerance for me having any emotion,
Yeah.
and so I became so the work was to become trigger proof.
Mm.
I moved back in with my parents when you and I started kind of working together,
Yeah. What a
and
crazy time, eh?
crazy, right? And then I realized, and I worked on finally getting to the place where I no longer needed them to understand me. I realized everything that I was doing was to try to get my dad to understand me.
Yeah.
And then when the second that I realized that that day was never going to come,
Mm-hmm.
slowly he started to understand me more. It was really weird. And
Mm.
still we have our challenges. Still they don't have a great tolerance for me having any emotions, that they still are, but there's a deep sense of security in my relationship with all family members, my tribe. I now since got married. I have a 7-month-old son at the recording of this.
Yep.
All of these blessings that came into my life after I stopped trying to be successful, and started to try to started working on healing with those younger parts of myself. So this is what I now share with entrepreneurs, professionals, who are going through the exact same thing. You're not
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and obviously, we've kind of alluded to it a few times already that we I think we met in a very purposeful way at a specific time in our lives.
Both of
Like
us.
just everything about it. You were there to support us through the journey that we went through, and I think it was a bit of vice versa too, right? Like there was an
Without a
element.
doubt, both you and Shar were there for me at a time where, in that pit I was in as well, just working on healing myself. You reached out and said, "Hey, could you help us?" And I was like, "Sure." So we started hanging out, and
Yeah,
I'm so grateful for you guys. I love you and Shar, and like we just got family photos, by the way.
yeah,
And let me just share this with you. It's a photograph of me and my 7-month-old son. We had family photos taken for our 1 year anniversary, and
yeah.
the hat that Dominic is wearing is the one that Shar gave as
Oh,
a gift.
really?
Like she gave us some of your Bodhi
Yeah.
and Logan's,
The
kind of the
hand-me-downs. Yeah,
hand-me-downs.
yeah.
They're wearing Bodhi and Logan's hat. Dominic is wearing Bodhi and Logan's hat. So
That's
I just wanted to
awesome.
share that with you.
Obviously, some of the biggest takeaways I take from that was that I think, and obviously there was many moments along your life, but specifically when we met, there was a moment where you had to step back and really see that you needed to lean in and do the work, and it was uncomfortable, and it was something that you had to face with a certain amount of courage, like we were talking about before. And I've seen a different Nima come out in the last like 3 years, right? And obviously, I'm sure there's still days and moments where there's things that you think about that maybe you should be leaning into more or whatever. But let's maybe go back to that time, and as much as you're comfortable in talking about that, kind of shaped your beliefs and shifted things for you to really embracing the trigger proof methodology of how you're now serving other people. Do you want to maybe dive a little deeper into
Yeah.
that and that time and just kind of go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I realized over the last 3 years, what I learned from that period of time when I stopped working and started like going inside, what I realized was um, that the personal development that I was doing to try to kind of give me a sense of confidence and self that was lost because of parents that invalidated me, that my experience with parents that I felt were invalidating to me. I realized that the personal development that I was doing was a distraction from those feelings, was to try to not have me feel those things. And those feelings, though that wounded child is in my shadow, what I realize is those feelings don't go away. They get locked up and hidden in our shadows. So if you have an experience as a child where you were hurt, where you didn't feel seen, it's a very painful experience to go through as a young child. And if you have parents that don't teach you what to do with your emotions, the only way that you know how to move forward is to bottle them up, which is what most men do, right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
that's what most men do, and women do it too. Uh, but men are notorious for this. And so we hide from those feelings with success. We hide from those feelings with external validation of whatever sort, all as a compensation for that wound to not have to feel it. And what I did was the hardest thing for me about this was to not distract myself with the usual ways that I would get that validation:
Yep.
women,
Yep.
money, um, uh, and clients telling me how amazing I was. I mean, that's why I
Right.
got into a car. Why do you think I
Yeah.
became a chiropractor? Because
Yeah.
it was the quickest way. Because becoming a medical doctor, you don't hear as often, "Wow, you're
Yeah.
magic. Oh, you're my hero. Wow!" Like how many times would they hear, "You're like a god." My fucking ego loved it.
I
You're like
bet.
magic hands. I couldn't get that in medicine. I did it in chiropractic. That was what drove me, right?
Yeah.
And so the hardest part when I realized when this was happening, I realized something. I was like, I have to stop using those things to not feel this insignificance. So I did the hardest thing was I put myself in a place where I actually knowingly, willingly felt the pain of my own insignificance,
Mm.
the pain of my own irrelevance, the pain of my own unworthiness, the pain of my own like dismissal, like this person is nobody, because I defined my identity based on all of this Dr. Nima persona that I created. I'm a rap. I rap in my talks.
Yep.
I entertain. I salsa dance. I have like 8 to 10 different tools in my toolbox to get your attention and to make you love me.
Wow. And I'll just share quickly. Nima shared this video from 2012, which was obviously at a time. I know you were producing a lot of content back then, and it was very entertaining, right? Like this one was incredible. Like the makeup work on you being the guru and talking to yourself. And but the message was very similar to what you're talking about now.
And it
It
was
just
exactly what I needed.
yeah, it just feels like you're living it now, like you actually are being it, as opposed to maybe back then you were like, how can I
Pretending
create
to.
something that gets
Yeah.
the attention that like right there was a different
Mhm.
intention to it.
Exactly. And that's been the big shift in the last 3 years
Yeah.
is that now there's a difference between a leader who's, clearly just posting so that they can kind of seem like they're doing it, and then somebody who's busy doing it. Like
Yeah.
there's a difference. It's like, look at me, everybody. I'm going to show you how to be confident. Here, look at me. I'm so confident. I'm telling you how confident I am.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm not talking about how confident I am. I'm busy helping you with something, and in the in the beingness of helping you, confidence is just a byproduct of it. So I realized that 3 years ago, what was missing in my life was that I wasn't living the identity that I was trying to put on, this Dr. Nima identity. I realized that I wanted to take on a whole new identity. And the whole
Mm.
new identity that I was looking towards embodying, not just talking about, was a humble servant leader. Right now,
Yeah.
humble, I could work on being a little more humble. But I truly feel that I'm serving and I'm leading by example now. And the evidence that I have is by the way that my wife looks at me,
Mm.
right? Not because I'm doing anything for her or whatever. It's just and the way that my son looks at me and smiles when he just looks at me. When he sees me after I haven't seen him in a while, boom, bursts into smile. That to me is evidence that I'm actually living it. I'm not talking about it. And so
Right.
that's been the difference. And now my messaging is all about, hey, here's how you create a secure relationship. And
Yeah.
here's why insecure relationships happen, because here's where my insecurity came from.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes back to I actually have I've got a few sticky notes on my computer now. I kind of chopped them off and stuck them on there as reminders to me. And one of them is be accountable to your greatest self. Just that simple, which is like when nobody else is looking, do the right thing that you know is the thing that you need to be doing, right?
Yeah.
And
Do you want another
I
one? Do you want another
y-
sticky note? Are
yeah,
you
throw it
ready?
at me, man.
Here it is. If you're wanting to make a decision, is what would a person who truly loves themselves do in this moment?
Mm,
A
right.
person who completely, absolutely, unconditionally loves themselves, what would they do in this moment?
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
That one's your next sticky note, my friend. It's a good one.
Yeah, I love it. And, a lot of it, I think the biggest thing that comes up for me is whenever I hear stuff like that, it always lands and you're like, yeah, yeah. And then there's a part of me that defaults to like, yeah, yeah, sounds good. But you know what? I'm busy and I got to do this and I got to do that. And I'm trying to orchestrate everything and control it. Right. And that's
Yeah.
been a big part of my journey as well, is this idea that I've always thought that I can control it and that there is some elements of, that I can create absolutely everything in my future, and knowing that sometimes just shit happens in life and it's about being able to embrace these things that you didn't see coming but now are a part of your journey whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
and
In this moment, what would a self-loving individual do?
mm,
In this moment, it's a really good guidance.
yeah.
It's a really good guidepost for me.
And if there's anybody that's watching and listening to this that can relate to what I was saying, and even what Nima's been describing about his background of like just, go, 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 and entertaining and creating and all these things, one of the biggest takeaways is just slow down, slow down, take a moment. This is where, I still laugh because the first event that I went to that Nima hosted in Vancouver, Shar and I both went to it. We started with a meditation. Do you remember this?
Yep.
And it was in a room that's it wasn't a closed off room, so there was windows to the outside and that type of thing. And I remember at the end of it even saying to you, I was like, yeah, meditation's not for me. I can't do this. Like, it's just too many distractions. I just like, it's a waste of time, And I don't think that way anymore, Nima, just so you know. But at the same time, it's still there. It's still there inside of me. There's still a part of me that has trouble turning the world off, that has
Who
trouble,
doesn't? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
looking inward, right?
Yeah, totally. And that part of us is the younger part of us that felt like they couldn't relax. They
Mm,
had to do, or to be safe. And it's a journey to unfuck that part of us, because that part of us is a trauma response. It's very much alive in most entrepreneurs, which is, I can't take my foot off the gas, otherwise it's all going to be taken away from me.
yeah,
So I got
yeah.
to keep going, keep going, keep going. I can't turn this off. I can't enjoy this moment. There's no way I'm giving myself any
Mm,
permission to take off and enjoy this moment, because it's all going to be taken away from me. I can't enjoy this moment with my family. It's all going to be taken away from me. So I'm just going to keep hustling, and then eventually the whole family will be taken away from you.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? So giving yourself permission to just hit the pause button and be with this discomfort of, oh my gosh, I can't stop thinking about this, and really learning how to stretch the gap between that stimulus and how you respond to it, so that you can then feel a sense of calm and be co-creating your day rather than chasing after life, realizing that life is moving through you.
yeah,
That's the shift that happened to me that completely shifted my business. It was like I was chasing after business, chasing after life, like it's this thing outside of me. But what's different and why I'm so much more grounded now is through these practices of becoming trigger proof. I was like, holy fuck, I don't have to chase after life. I am life itself.
yeah.
Life moves through me and I'm able to enjoy it, and I'm a co-creator, and I don't have to chase. It it's coming to me. It's
Mm,
been a huge shift. And now, as far as the money that I used to chase, I don't chase after it anymore. It's chasing after me.
yeah, yeah,
Clients, I don't chase after anymore. I just put out content, as answering questions and serving and being that hollow reed. And literally my inbox is like, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I'm like,
yeah,
you hit pay dirt when it truly doesn't matter, when you're actually living and being it. That's the biggest shift for entrepreneurs, that it takes a couple of years to go from chasing after and trying to manifest to living what you're teaching. When you're living what you're teaching, you're not having to chase, you're just trusting it just comes to you.
yeah. The thought just came to my mind here too about our ability to receive the feedback and receive the positivity and the things that are coming to us too. I know I'm in a Monday men's group as well that we do every Monday evenings, and it's just a space for people to be able to share. And the guy that leads it, I'm not sure if you know. Do you know Nick Wood?
No, I don't.
And do you know Di Manuel?
Yes, I
Both
know Die.
Vancouver
I know
guys, right?
Die Manuel. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
So
like the moose, right? I was in his
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I was in
exactly.
his when I did CrossFit, like he was in, when I used to do CrossFit, he was in
Yep.
my group. He was in
Yep.
I was like, this guy's a beast. So
Yeah.
he runs a men's group now.
Yeah. So Di did a TEDx talk recently just talking about vulnerability, and his good friend and partner in this, his name's Nick Wood, where this is related to what we were just talking about, is he's got a certain presence to him. I've only been on 2 calls, but I actually acknowledged him for it and said, you know what? I just have to acknowledge you for your presence and the space that you're holding for people. And he actually took a second to say, I received that. And I said, that's why right there. I said, you just showed me why that is, because most people, including me, like this is where I had to
Deflected.
call myself out. Yeah, it's just deflected. Yeah. No, I know. I'm a nice guy. I get it. But like, I got to be doing this and I need more followers than I need. You know what I mean? There's this constant sense of
I'm not deserving. I'm
I'm
not
not
worthy.
deserving. Yeah. And it's such a simple concept, but yet when we become consciously aware of it, like hopefully somebody watching this even might be able to go, "Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
That's me," right? And then just dive a little deeper and check out a video and
Yeah.
join some, Monday men's group where you can just show
Yeah.
up and express what you're going through or
Well,
and I
there
know
there
you do a lot of this stuff, right?
Oh
You've got your
yeah, this is
Facebook
part
group
of
and
my trainings with my tribe, intimacy upgrade or intimacy accelerator, where I really go into deep shadow work, which is integrating those wounded shadowy parts that keep us in our heads, out of our bodies,
mm,
and not present. So this presence you're talking about can only happen when you're integrating those darker parts of yourself, because you're not running away from parts of yourself. You're actually okay with those parts of yourself so you can be present. But that's why we can't be present as an entrepreneur, because we're trying to run away from that poor little Saskatchewan boy who, or was beat up in hockey, or whatever it is that you story that you have,
oh
that
yeah, there's lots of them.
that's unconsciously driving your entrepreneurial pursuit.
Yeah.
Because every entrepreneur has to go through that period where you start off with this dream and you go and hustle and you're driven by the fuel of fear,
Yep.
right? And you don't
Yep.
know, and then you don't realize it until you start getting into relationships and having that mirrored back to you, and you don't want to hear it. That what they're all complaining about is, we don't feel your presence.
Mm,
And you're like, stop criticizing me, just like my mom and dad did. Can't you see what I'm doing? Da, 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 da. We become narcissists and we think we're being attacked. What they're saying is, you're not present. In other
mm,
words, you're not in your body. You're in your head, trying to account and trying to compensate for those wounds. We see it. So your family members see your shadows, but you don't, until you pause and integrate them, and instantly you become present. There's a difference there's like a third dimension. You feel it. You get to feel that in the body. And
yeah.
and and now, just when I do my Facebook lives, I just enrolled a client. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, so what is it? She goes, it's your presence. It's like, I can feel that you're there. I'm like, the work works. It's
Yeah.
when you're actually, it's in your body. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like a wrist shot. Okay. If I give you a stick and I put you on ice, you're going to do a wrist shot. You're going to be able to do that because you've done it a million times. You've done a wrister into the top corner. You've practiced that. So it's in your body. And when I watch you do it, I'll be like, oh, yeah, this guy's a hockey player. You
Yeah.
don't have to say, hey, I've been playing hockey for a long time and I play. All you do is do a wrist shot, and I'll be like, "Oh fuck, this guy's a hockey player."
Yeah.
That's the difference between having the teaching, the work land in your body, and you just talk about it.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
I'll give you one more hockey analogy, and then I got a lightning round of questions here for you, Nima, and then we'll wrap it up. But the idea of conflict, like the story that I had growing up, and it wasn't until I was about 13 or 14, but at that time I was like almost the same size as I am now, dude. I was like 6 feet tall and like, I was a lot skinnier then, but like 180 pounds, and at that time when you're that size and you're playing hockey, you're being told by scouts, like people that are looking to draft people into the NHL, hey, you got to play a little tougher. You got to be a little
Uh,
angrier out there. I want to see you be mean.
uh,
And therefore, and this is what I like always associated is like whenever I saw conflict or if I saw pushback or any kind of negative comments coming towards me, my instant reaction was fight.
oh yeah,
Literally fight, like obviously I wasn't fighting people through the comment feeds on a Facebook post, but
that's what
I
comes up.
felt it though.
You're that teenage kid that was told to be more of a goon. That
Yeah,
came up.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
lives in your body, Trevor. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be like talking to a therapist doesn't remove that little guy.
Yeah.
Talking to a therapist, going to counseling, talking about it, Okay, that's fine. That's better than keeping it silent. I'm not going to say that but that's incomplete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's in your body. The best analogy for that is like you have to unlearn that. The work, the deep inner work is unlearning that pattern. It's kind of like, Diana, my wife, played a lot of years of badminton.
Mm.
Never played tennis. So last year, while she was pregnant, we were just trying to figure out some stuff to do to stay active. Hey,
Yeah.
there's a tennis court close by. Let's go play some tennis. So we grabbed some rackets, some balls, and I just said, all right, so here's the difference. Tennis and badminton seems like racket sports. Same thing, right? No,
Yeah.
it's not the same thing. In badminton, it's all wrist. In
Yep. Yep.
tennis, you can't use your wrist the same. You have to use your body and you have to use your arm. You can't use your wrist. She goes, okay, I got it. So what do you think happened as soon as the ball landed in her court and she was about to hit it?
Just
Wrist.
yeah. Over the fence onto the
In
streets.
that
Yep.
hour, I probably went out into the street about 13 times. And each
Yeah.
time I came back and said, babe, no wrist. So I
Yeah.
was talking to her to say no wrist, but in her body was wrist. So
Mm.
this reactivity that you're going through, talk therapy, anger management course,
Mm-hmm.
does not even come close to touching it while it's happening in the moment. And so
Mm.
that was my biggest challenge. And so what I learned to do, and the overview experience, which is my signature event, is to take it's now virtual 5 hour event. You should check it out. Like
Yeah.
it's gotten crazy different since thanks to COVID, and we had to take those live events and 3 day live event. I put it into a 5 hour event. What we do is we take your trigger and in 5 hours widen the gap of that trigger
Mm.
and turn it into healing parts of yourself so that now when the stimulus comes, you don't go back to flicking the wrist.
Yeah.
You're now learning with time and practice how to make a different shot that's a different reality. You're no longer playing badminton anymore.
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur. You're not a little hockey player now. You're a tennis player now, and you don't have to go back to your old pattern of flicking your wrist. And so
Yeah.
this is what I do in a nutshell, if I could describe what it is that I do.
Yeah, and I recommend anybody to check it out. And in fact, Shar and I were talking about it the other day, and she said, "I feel like I should do the overview experience again." I was like, "Yes, and we should. Maybe we do it independently this time, or go join together." But it's a constant. The work never ends, too, right? And it's
Every level up brings the devil up.
yeah, and
Every
that's
time you level up to a new transition, let's say you sell a business and you start a new one. Let's say you have a new child. Let's say you buy a new house. These are all levels up of transition, and the gap between your old self and the new self will bring up these old wounds.
hmm
And so without the tools and without talking through them and working through them, then those old wounds take over and they hinder your ability to leap up to the next level.
yeah. Yeah, it's always, I think most people can probably relate to it. It's anytime you're going down a path of something new, you've never experienced it before, and there's that fear of like doing it wrong or failing. And in some cases, failing in the real world could be catastrophic, right? Like if you're bungee jumping or if you're whatever, some type of extreme sport and you fail, you could die, right? And therefore we go back to that thought process of like, I might die if I say the wrong thing. It's like me with this podcast, right? There's
Hmm.
still an element, even though, like I've
Yeah.
been doing this for 10
Yeah.
years. I've
But
I've probably
still,
have
what if
thousands of videos out
what if
online,
I get
right?
haters? Oh no.
Right?
I
And it
can't
still
love
comes up.
myself.
Yeah, yeah, it still comes up for sure. And there's a phrase, obviously, that kind of summarizes it really well. And I know Brene Brown talks about it in that Netflix special. Is the story I'm telling myself is. And she talks about how her and her husband actually communicate that way now, right? Because she used a great analogy of her and her husband swimming across a lake and
I remember
her
that.
stopping halfway and
He was
saying, "This
having a
is
panic attack.
Yeah, yeah. She had no idea what was going through his head, and it turned out they were complete. Like they had no idea what each one of them was thinking. But the story they were telling themselves, for her, it was like, "I'm not good enough. I'm not sexy enough anymore." For him, it was, "I'm not man enough." Like it was really interesting to hear that stuff because I could see, past both arguments between me and Shar, as well as moments where we've been able to talk through those things without conflict, right? Or
Yeah.
with healthy conflict. Let me
Yeah.
phrase it that
With
way. It's
with
healthy
con
conflict.
with conflict not going like having to have the police be involved.
Mm,
You know what I mean? That's the
yeah.
difference between a conflict being neutralized in, a couple of hours versus needing to call the police. There is a lot of work to be done to make sure you're, behind door number one.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's what I love teaching because I needed it the most.
Well, and that's why I wanted to share you with my network. And obviously we'll share more things as we go. Cause like
Let's
we say,
we should do
just
this again. Yes, we'll do
absolutely,
this
man.
again.
Absolutely. So you got like 10 more minutes here. I got
Sure, let's
the
do it.
power of one lightning round here. So feel free to answer these quickly or as long as you want. There's no
Bring it.
criteria on any of it.
Bring it.
All right. So here we go. So who is the one person or mentor that you feel has been the most influential in your life all time?
All-time John DeMartini, without a doubt. He introduced me. First of all, the way that he changed my life, I was 21 years old when I first heard him speak, and I was in my first year of chiropractic school. He blew my mind and moved me to tears, and I woke up
Mm,
and I kind of got up and I turned to my friend next to me. I said, "I want to do what he's doing."
mm,
I hadn't even started becoming a chiropractor. I want to do what he's doing. Fast forward 23 years, I did all of his courses and programs. I was one of his disciples.
yeah.
And as a chiropractor, he was kind of like my mentor and helped me. And I end up 23 years after that day when I turned to Yvette and said, I want to do what he's doing. I shared the stage with him in Paris, France in 2019, 2 years ago from now.
That's
And
right.
I was one of the speakers, and then I got to introduce him and shared that story. So
Amazing.
that was the way it came around full circle. And now his disciples are now becoming my clients because of the work that I've been able to advance on his work. Kind of like Carl Jung was Freud's student, but
Yeah.
went off into his own thing. I've taken John's work and added kind of the somatic part of it
Yeah.
that's been deeply missing, and I have nothing but mad love for John for setting me on this path.
Awesome. Who would you say is the one person or mentor that is most influential in your life right now?
Right now, Russell Kennedy, I would say,
Mm,
because of his, I don't know, we've just become really good friends. Uh, the mentor, just his ability to read into me, into people.
yeah.
What he's taught me about somatic work and healing childhood wounds, and now we have a kind of like a, I would say, clubhouse room every week show called
Mm,
Mangxiety together. You'd
okay.
find it pretty interesting, where I've
Yeah.
just learned a lot from him, and I've taught him as well. So he's a mentor uh, and a friend, but we're mentoring each other. So he's probably the most influential in my life right now.
Awesome. I'll link all these up, of course, too. What is the one thing you're most excited about right now?
Hmm.
Personal or business?
Being a dad and watching my
Mm.
son, he's growing his first tooth.
Oh,
Second tooth is
yes.
on
Those are
his way.
fun days.
Yeah, exactly. Second, I'm most excited about just wha being a dad, and I get most excited when I have my group trainings with my tribe, with my community,
Mm,
who are learning, who are so hungry to learn how to create secure relationships. I look forward to my calls. It's like oh my God, I can't wait to share this with people. Those are the two things that get me the most excited is what I get to when I get to talk into this camera and teach what I've just gone through,
yeah.
and hanging out with my son and wife.
Awesome. Yeah, Nima and I were neither one of us were. Well, I guess I was already a dad, but only a year in when we first met. So
Wow.
definitely changes who you are and how you show up. What is one piece of advice you would give me that would dramatically change my life today?
Oh man, stop judging your feelings. Stop making your feelings wrong. Validate every feeling that comes up, and your life, with your relationship with the universe will completely change. This was a big one for me. I never had the experience growing up that my feelings, my anger, whatever, when I got angry, I didn't have a mother that knew how to be understanding of my anger. I had my anger defended, judged. I wasn't allowed to have emotions. If I had emotions, then I had a mental disorder. Can you
Mm,
imagine? That's why I teach this. This
yeah.
comes from the pain of a little boy whose emotions were gaslit ever since he was a kid, to the point where my mom still to this day believes that I should be medicated for attention deficit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
imagine, in other words, so the impact of that is that I just withdraw because or hide my emotions because of a lack of emotional safety that I have with them, which then translated to a lack of emotional safety within myself. So I had to unfuck all of that by constantly giving permission for whatever feeling that came up. It's okay to be angry, Nima. It's okay to feel ashamed. It's okay to have guilt. It's
Hmm.
okay to it's okay to not want to speak right now. It's okay to not be okay. That is the first moment where an opening happens for transformation. But
Mm,
whatever you resist persists. If you resist your anger, it persists. If you resist your shame, it persists. It's okay to, you know, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be, um, sad. It's okay to have sadness, right? That's the most. This is kind of like the foundational. If you start in my, working with us, it's kind of like ground zero, because you're gonna forget this tomorrow, even though you can resonate with what I'm saying.
yeah.
Tomorrow, you're gonna go back to invalidating your emotions,
Of
because it's
course.
because it's because it's the because it's your badminton. Uh,
Yeah.
it,
It's
it's
the
your
reaction.
it's the reaction. It's the natural thing.
It's
I've been
that
doing it for
memory
four
we go back to.
it's your muscle memory. So I've been doing it for so many years. That's why it takes time to unlearn all of these habits. And what happens is a really interesting thing happens. Two really interesting things happen when you give yourself permission to have your emotions. Number one, when you allow your negative emotions to come up, you can also have joyful emotions come up, and you won't have to judge those and go, "Oh, it's going to be taken away." You're like, "I can feel joy too."
Mm,
It's okay to feel a sense of calm too. Like I can give myself permission to be happy.
yeah.
I wasn't giving that either. Neither
I
are
hear
most
ya.
entrepreneurs, right? And then
I hear ya.
the next miracle happens when you do this is that other people around you can have their emotions too, and that you don't bring yourself into it and make it mean something about you.
Mm,
Other people's other people start to be able to you give other people the safety to have their emotions without making it about you.
right. Love it. Three more quick ones here. So the frame of this show again, and one of the things that I say at the end of every one of my shows is be grateful, be curious, and be brave. So what is one thing you're most grateful for right now?
I'm grateful for my family, my wife and my son. I am grateful for the work that I did and who I became in order to attract and co-create a family life like I have.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm grateful for.
Amazing. What is the one thing you're most curious about right now? Looking to learn more about.
Curious about creating and maintaining secure relationships. I'm
Mm,
a student of this. That's
the
why I love
work never
teaching it.
ends.
The work never ends through every conflict, through every trigger. I'm curious about how to take that and turn it into fuel for my own growth and my own self love, and how to have a bigger heart, a bigger, more open heart as a result, rather than becoming bitter and closing down.
Hmm.
How do I open through each conflict and through each trigger? That's what I'm curious about.
Last question, Nima. What is the one thing that scares you right now that you know you must face with bravery?
Um, Good question. Uh, getting complete with my last relationship,
Mm,
um, and how sharing my journey is going to bring up um, some people's resistance of that, of my past relationship that was relatively, I mean, I didn't have that many followers or people knowing about it, but I had a community that understood that it was a really toxic relationship. And so having to um, face the scrutiny of past relationship stories, but it's going to be part of my journey, and I'm going to write about it, and that's and it scares me.
perfect. No, I thank you so much. I just want to end it with that of I just want to acknowledge you, man, for who you are and the person that you the person that shows up every single day to do this work and knows that there are still things that you get to even face yourself and when you do, it serves other people too. And you know, Shar and I are both eternally grateful to you because of who you are and what you you know, the story that we hold to how who you were as a part of our life in
Thank
our own
you.
journey.
Thanks.
And as it continues on here too,
Yeah,
you know,
man.
like it's
We're
gonna be
gonna hang
awesome, man.
out
We're
this
gonna be
summer.
hey, we're gonna be dads together, you know,
Yeah.
when we can actually get together again. We got the hot tub now in West
Yes,
Kelowna.
I'm bringing Dominic. We got the fire pit. I'm ready. Don't
Yeah,
worry. I'm all ready. We got our trip to Kelowna planned. Don't worry about it, brother.
done. Just load up the family.
Caleb, who I've been working with for the last year, who you met.
Yep.
He's now moved to Kelowna as well.
Yep,
So we'll
he
all hang
just
out.
pinged. Yeah, he just pinged me on Thursday. Actually, he was like, "Hey, I'm turning down Pandozi right now. You around?" And I wasn't in the office that day,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
he's a
But
great guy, and it's been amazing. You guys should really talk about relationships. Uh,
yeah,
the two of you guys have a very interesting, overlap there. So I
we'll
can't wait to
definitely
come
get
hang out with
together.
all of you this summer.
Awesome. Well, the invitation is open. So, where can people find out more about Dr. Nima and connect with you online?
Other than my website, drnima.com, the best place is to join my free Facebook group. And when
Yep.
you enter your email into the Facebook group, you get a 90-minute training that normally is 97 bucks on my website. You get it for free with a promo code in your email that basically walks you through the steps that we take our clients to becoming trigger proof. Now, you can do this on your own. You don't have to, do it with us, but if you feel inspired and you want an amazing community and want to be part of this conversation and learn how to become more vulnerable, like literally everything you saying about Brene Brown, I'm listening and I'm like, yeah, we literally it's like applied Brene Brown. We
Right.
apply whatever she's teaching. It's not just something you read in a book. We get you to do it, sharing vulnerably amongst a community after you kind of expose an attachment wound and then share it vulnerably. We're actually doing the work she talks about.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure to link that all up. And it's funny you say that actually, because when I got done that Brene Brown Netflix special, I remember because there's about 2 minutes at the end where they show people putting their jackets on and they're getting up and they're walking out of the room. And that was literally what went through my head last night, Nima. I was like, how many of these people are going to go home and be the same person that they were when they came into this event? And how many people are going to truly allow what she was saying to land and actually put it to action?
The
And then
majority.
naturally that's the thought that went through my head is like, well, most people walk away and go, well, now what
Exactly.
like what do I do? Do I be vulnerable by telling everybody my deepest dark, and she even speaks about that in the special, right? She's like, look, vulnerability is not spilling everything that you have to share on Facebook. You know,
We
it's
need a guide. We
you
need
need
a
a guide.
guide. You need
Yeah.
a guide to walk you through because it's not just a theory, but the future of our existence it like revolves around your ability to heal those parts of you and share them because, we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to share shameful shit because we still are ashamed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, this is really the method to heal it. She talks about shame. She's a shame researcher, and I
Yeah.
just experienced. That's why I'm doing the same work as her, but coming from a perspective of chiropractic. I was like, look, these people are having chronic problems because they're holding on to their shame.
Yeah.
So I walk them through. It's not just like a theory. It's like we walk you through actually getting that vulnerability. So that's what we love to do. Becoming
Amazing.
trigger proof.
There you go. Become trigger proof. Go check it out, everyone. Nima, my brother, my friend, I love you, man. Thank you so much for doing this, and we'll do it again soon. And we'll see you soon.
Yes, absolutely. And there's the pic I just dropped in there, if you can see the Dropbox picture.
Amazing. I'll link it. I'll make sure it's all linked up, and we'll show it on the video afterwards.
Awesome,
all right,
bro. Take care.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Trevor Turnbull Show. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider subscribing on my YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast platform, and leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. Now, until next time, remember, today is a beautiful day of opportunity. Trust that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. So be grateful, be curious, and be brave.